welcome to this edition of Inside Fall River. My name is Steve Camara, and I'll be hosting this segment of Inside Fall River. And today, both Wendy and I are talking about housing issues, and particularly housing issues as it relates to apartment living, mostly public apartment living, but also private apartment living. And particularly my segment will be focusing on those private property owners who have multiple units, whether it's a 3-decker or 6 apartments or many apartments in some cases, with some realtors having many units. And I'm pleased to have some very enlightened guests on this issue. One that you're very familiar with, since he's a regular on FRC TV with our Voices from the Hill, and that's our state representative from the 7th Bristol District, Representative Alan Sylvia. Welcome, Alan. Nice to be now on this side of the table. Usually I'm on that side of the table, but today I get to join you on this side. Also, we have 2 representatives from Quintel Real Estate, which is a fairly good-sized real estate company in Fall River, based right here in Fall River at 73 Columbia Street. And we have the owner and president, I assume president will be your title, Daniel Quintel.
Thank you.
Welcome, Daniel. And an associate of Daniel also working with Quintel is Brett O'Connor. So welcome, Brett. You guys are all dressed up, and I'm a little more casual, but I've got my FRC Media shirt on, so it's important that we promote our entity here. We're going to be talking about landlord issues, and you know, it's funny, the word landlord also often conjures up people with money or people with authority. The fact is, I think many of us know many landlords are struggling, and financially things are difficult. I know that is the case in my own experience, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that, the misconception that people have about anyone that owns property is making a lot of money. But Alan, as a state representative, among the first duties he's undertaken is submitting some legislation that I'd like him to talk a little bit about and explain to us what is the purpose of the legislation and what drove you to that point.
Steve, like in so many communities, and certainly I'm not speaking to the choir, because these folks who own real estate and have been in that business know Fall River, like most gateway cities, have many multi-family units. Over the past 2 years, Fall River has experienced the economic woes that all of those other cities have experienced. And with it has come increased numbers of foreclosures. And because people haven't been paying their rent, they've lost their jobs, these, as you mentioned, these individual, sometimes they put their life into owning a 3-family home or a 4-family home. This is, you know, what they've been working toward for a good part of their life. And suddenly they found themselves in a position where tenants couldn't pay their rents. As a result, property values came down. They were underwater, which meant their mortgage was more than what the assessed value of the property was. And they foreclosed in a number of cases. But the reason why I filed the bills is because there are so many injustices that landlords have to face. When landlords go to, property owners go to housing court, they're faced with the same economic problems that the tenant has. You just said where that word itself, landlord, I think it comes from medieval times.
I think it does, in fact.
The owner of all the properties, it was, obviously had all the money and was the tax collector, or not the case. So here's a situation where tenants who have agreed to pay a certain amount of rent are unable to pay that rent. And you get the housing court after going 2 or 3 months without receiving rent. Finally, the 15-day notice to quit has been given. You finally end up in housing court, and the owner of the property is present, and who is out several hundred, could be $1,500, $2,000 in rent, and the tenant is provided with an attorney with no cost. Landlord has the same problem. It wasn't the landlord's fault that the tenant didn't pay the rent, they weren't the cause of that, but the landlord, if they need legal representation, has to hire an attorney. So the pool, the grant that provides the services to the tenant in providing those legal services should be available to the landlord.
Now, does your legislation specifically address
Request that.
lawyer fees? Is that
Legal representation.
Is it more than that, or is that exclusively legislation?
That's one. The second bill would when a landlord is in, when a tenant has been given a notice to vacate the property after they've been adjudicated that they have to leave for non-payment of rent, or for what other purpose they have to leave, any items that remain in the property are the responsibility of the landlord. So the landlord would have to hire a bonded moving company, and that would have to be placed in storage at the landlord's expense.
For a minimum
Of
period
6
of
months.
Of 6 months.
This is a cost that could be more than $2,000 to the landlord. Additionally, now we have the tenant loss of rent. We have damage done to the apartment in most cases. We have court costs. And now we have $2,000 minimum for storage. Unacceptable. So this bill would address the storage, eliminate the storage issue, because the tenant is given ample time to remove the property from their apartment prior to leaving. And other states don't handle it this way. If this was in other states, that property, whichever remaining, would be the property of the landlord, or would be trash. In most cases, it is trash.
Daniel, if you would sort of get in on this, and Brett as well, from the experiences that you have, and I understand that you own several hundred, are you a couple hundred? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how many units you have, and what are the kinds of issues that you face in addition to those raised by Representative Sylvia?
Sure, and thank you for allowing us to be here today. Basically, I've been a landlord going on about 26 years, and we've dealt with the same issues since we started. And what Alan has said is completely true, and it's not fair for landlords. Landlords don't have any rights; they have no say. You go to housing court, you start off with a 14-day notice. Then after that, you have to do a summary process, and by the time you get them into court, you've lost several months of rent. And the first thing they do, ironically, most of them, is they'll call minimum housing. So now you'll get a minimum housing inspector going out to the property, and they have to do their job as well, and they're there to make sure that the apartment is safe for the tenants that are in there. But a lot of the damage that you get continuously, report after report, is 90% is what the tenant has done to the property, such as busted doors, bed bugs, infestation, soil carpets, ripped carpets. So you're getting this list from minimum housing that says you have immediate compliance, missing smoke detectors, missing batteries. Well, it wasn't like that when he moved in. And you have them sign a statement of property conditions. You show it to the minimum housing people. They understand. They know going out there that it's an eviction. 9 out of 10, the building inspectors, they do a great job. They know, but they have to do their job. And their job is to make sure that there's public safety.
Now, Brett, have you run into the same kinds of things? I know you work together in the same units.
I own all my property with Dan, and that's it's the same idea where you can have a tenant who has a younger child who smokes in the hallway, and they remove the smoke detectors. Now you can have an issue where the smoke detector has no battery. It's because the tenant's smoking in the hallway, and that's a violation that we would have to repair. A lot of the issues are done by the tenant at some point from when they moved in to the time that the violation is filed.
And I think we ought to emphasize that not all tenants are
not.
like this. Many are good, and many do the right thing, but there are many who don't do the right thing, and those are the ones that add to the bills. I think the word landlord, as was mentioned, is a throwback to medieval periods. I prefer referring to us, and I own 27 units, so not a lot of units, but enough to give me headaches and
I'd love
provide
to
me
get
with
the
difficulty. You know, and I do recall at one time I thought that this would be like Easy Street, you know, that if you own 3 units or you own 6 units, you know, that you were going to be in the black, you're going to be doing okay. I find every month that if I can get all my bills paid, I'm ahead of the game. I just want to break even to be paying the bills when they're due, because the mortgages don't stop being due. The insurance company doesn't stop saying you can waive this month's payment. Taxes, water bills, and all of them have increased by double digits over the last several years. And you can't increase rents to match the increases in expenses.
It wasn't always that way, as you know. And I certainly I don't want to discourage people from buying multifamily homes. And certainly that's the business you folks are in. You're in real estate. I encourage people to buy homes. Look how many people have bought multifamily homes and have beautified their property. And I mean, you know, I think of those homes every day that I drive by, and people in my neighborhood that have beautified their property and you know, have good tenants. We're talking about tenants who just don't care. You know, and the other thing that disturbs me is when I go to meetings and I hear people say absentee landlords. Well, you're an absentee landlord by definition. You're an absentee landlord. You want many units, but you're not. And I say you're not because you give attention to your units. You're attentive to your tenants. You're there.
Yeah, I think the reference to absentee refers more to people that live a great distance from the city. And
if a property is foreclosed upon and it's owned by a bank in Ohio or in New York, that's an absentee landlord. Those are the people those are the folks that we want to stop. So we should do all that we can as a community to keep private ownership of homes privately.
Let me move to that point because we're getting, as fast as this has gone by, and we probably should give ourselves another opportunity at some time, and we will in the future, to go into some of these details, some of these issues in greater detail. But is there any place where property owners can go at this point to gather, to share ideas or to work together for their mutual benefit? Do we have a landlords association or a property owners association? And if not, and I think the answer is no, we don't.
No, we don't.
You know, what if anything can be done to get us together? I know the city has done some work. They have some workshops to benefit property owners. But
we had a forum. Mayor Flanagan had a forum, and matter of fact, we discussed many of these issues at that forum. And there have been a couple of attempts to gather landlords, have an organization, a landlord organization. And certainly not anti-tenant. You know, these things, we support tenant rights, and we want to make sure tenants are safe in their homes. But for some reason, it's failed. So, you know, I hope that I see it being done in other communities. I spoke before the Worcester Landlord Association.
Let me ask as we wrap, is anyone willing to step up and say, contact me if you're interested in going in this direction?
Well, one resource that has helped me since the 1st of January, mass.gov/courts. And you're able to access any type of entry for a individual if they've ever been evicted before. And that was not available as of last year, 2013. Beginning of January is available. So if you have a prospective
And let
tenant,
me wrap up. Dan, are you ready to say contact me if you'd like more information?
I mean, yes, we would love to, but I think rather than a landlord association, we need to work together with the state reps and change the laws that are currently affecting landlords.
Great.
You can have, you know, all kinds of associations and we're all going to meet, and that's why they fail.
Let me wrap up because we are right up against the clock, but I want to thank those of you who have tuned in today. Clearly this issue is an issue that's going to be around for a while. I can't say either optimistic or pessimistic at this point, but I'm hopeful that things will get better. Thank you for joining us on Inside Fall River, and thank you, guest, for joining us as well.
thank you.
Welcome back to Inside Fall River. I'm Wendy Garflip from United Neighbors, and today my guests are Jack Shipley, the wellness educator from the South Coast Healthy Housing and Workplace Initiative, friend of the show. You've been here before.
Yes, sir.
Great to have you back, Jack. And another friend of the show, Marilyn Edge, who's the director of the Western Bristol County and Foxborough Tobacco and Alcohol Prevention Collaborative. Quite a mouthful there.
Thank you.
But we're delighted to have you both on the show, and today we're going to be talking about the South Coast Healthy Housing and Workplace Initiative, which has a great acronym, SHWE. So tell me about SHWE.
SHWE. Basically, SHWE is a community transformation grant. It was a 2-year cross-sector grant to support public health efforts to reduce chronic diseases and promote healthy lifestyles.
So how do you go about putting this into action?
Well, what we've been doing is reaching out into the housing facilities. My domain was Fall River. There are 3 domains, Wareham, Mass, New Bedford, and Fall River. Now, my focus has been the housing authority in Fall River. However, we've also been doing public and private housing as well. We've been reaching out to everyone we can in the community. Basically, we're bringing health and wellness to people that cannot get out to their community, to get to a healthcare facility. So we've been setting up the South Coast Health Van to come to housing facilities. We've been setting up wellness groups inside housing facilities, such as nutrition, exercise, tobacco dependent support. We've been sort of going holistic with this approach. With the CDC's primary focus was smoking cessation.
So tell me a little bit about smoke-free buildings. Marilyn, you want to weigh in here?
Smoke-free buildings.
Yes. So what are we working on here?
The state law right now is for smoke-free workplaces, and Department of Ed regulations also call for smoke-free schools, not only buildings but grounds. So what I've been working on with Jack is reaching out to multi-unit family, public and private, multi-unit managers, housing managers. We get calls every day from tenants who have difficulty with other tenants who smoke, specifically elderly or disabled people who live in housing who don't smoke, but their next door neighbors smoke, and because
How
of
does that affect someone if they're next door?
Well, a lot of the housing systems have shared ventilation systems. They're big facilities. You know that all of the housing units are multi-family units, 4, 6, 8 sometimes. High rises like Ships Cove, where there's 200 apartments. So if a non-smoking person who has asthma or some other emphysema and doesn't smoke but lives next or is surrounded by other people who do, then the secondhand smoke that migrates through the walls, under the doors,
Inside the outlets.
through the electrical outlets, through their plumbing, they can smell the smoke and it affects their health, having to breathe that in. And that's why the state went from the smoke-free workplace law to now working on smoke-free housing. And HUD is moving towards federal legislation that all HUD-funded properties, or
And HUD, can you explain what HUD is?
HUD is the federal housing urban development money that subsidizes low-income housing.
Now, what would happen if we had a building where we'll say one floor was smoke-free and one floor will allow you to smoke? Would that still impact on the people living on the smoke-free floor?
Well, it depends on which floor it is. One of the things that I suggest to multifamily landlords and managers that want to try something like that is that you need to have all your smokers up above.
Because it moves up.
Because it
so
moves
what's
up.
the advantage
so
for a
it would be
landlord?
that it would be the same issue is if somebody was cooking very spicy food. You know, everybody on the floor. You know, even if you go to a 3-family house, if the woman on the first floor is making this fabulous Portuguese food, you can smell it. You
I
can
lived in a
smell it
building that
everywhere.
smelled like cabbage all the time. I understand that. I
That's
definitely
gross.
understand. But what is the advantage for a landlord to go smoke-free? Obviously, we would assume that he would care about the health and well-being of his tenants, but are there other advantages for a landlord to be smoke-free?
There are.
Oh, the cost, for one thing, I mean, if you're renting an apartment to someone who is a heavy smoker, they leave, someone who's a non-smoker moves in. I mean, the cost just to clean up and redo the whole apartment so it's absolutely clean from the previous tenant, the fee is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
In public housing, the figures that we've gotten from public housing, especially in Fall River and New Bedford, is if you have a tenant who moves out, who is a non-smoker, and moves out of that apartment, the turnover time to clean that apartment and make sure it's all set, patch holes in the walls, whatever, to get it ready for the next rental for a non-smoker is about 3 days. The time, and about $500. Paint, shampoo the rugs, whatever. If you're trying to clean up and renovate after a smoker, especially if there's more than one smoker in the house, you're talking closer to $1,800 and a 10-day time period.
So it's very advantageous for landlords to pursue this.
It is.
Absolutely.
And there's also some insurance companies that have that offer homeowners insurance to rental property. Some of them, not all, but some of them do offer discounts if your property is non-smoking.
Right, and we also do know the dangers of people who smoke in bed, fire danger, children picking up cigarettes. So it's not just the health and well-being of the person that's there, but obviously it affects the health and well-being.
Correct.
What are some of the challenges you're facing with this SHWE initiative, Jack?
Challenges. Currently, people, especially in this area, the fear change that I'm noticing. When we went, what was it, back in the 80s, Maryland, when the restaurants and pubs had to go smokeless?
2004.
Oh, was that soon, really? So, hello.
Yes.
Wait, restaurants weren't smoke-free before 2004?
Not unless they wanted to be.
Really?
The smoke-free workplace law went into effect. It was voted on in 2004, and by 2005 was the whole state.
No kidding.
Before that, there were numerous cities and towns that did it on their own.
Right.
But it wasn't a state law until 2004.
So what my point was, when people were starting to go smoke-free in restaurants, et cetera, people were furious. You can't do this. How can you do this to us? After the change, after people started having non-smoking restaurants and bars, it wasn't all that bad.
Right. Right. You don't
The
even think
earth
twice
did not
about it.
swallow
Right.
everybody up.
Right.
And eventually, once we get past that fear, we're all going to find out that it's not that bad.
One of the misconceptions is that we're forcing people to quit smoking. By working on this smoke-free housing initiative, that we're telling people you can't smoke, and that's not true. And even with the housing authority leases, there's got to be 25 or 30 communities already that have gone smoke-free in Massachusetts, with another 30 planning to go by January 1 of 2015. We're doing these meetings every day with housing authority boards of directors. And one of the misconceptions is if you're a smoker, you're not going to be able to apply for public housing, or you're not going to be able to get assisted elderly housing. And that's not true. Your lease will say you cannot smoke in your apartment. Your company cannot smoke. Your health aide cannot smoke in your apartment. They're not telling anybody you can't smoke, or that you have to quit, or you're not going to have a place to live. That's not the case. What they're saying is, once the regulation goes into effect, whether it's public housing or private, once that particular building decides or complex decides they're going to go smoke-free, is no one can smoke in your apartment. So you can continue to smoke all you want, but you have to do it outside. And there's varying degrees in different places about where that's going to be, whether or not there are some housing authorities that have created smoking areas. They've built gazebos.
Right, so that was my question. Is it going to be like the hospital where the entire grounds are smoke-free? Well, so will a tenant have to come down 8 floors and walk 3.5 blocks to have a cigarette and then return to his building, or will there be accommodations made?
And that is up to each individual housing authority and private home landlord.
Okay, so say I'm living in a housing authority and I smoke and I see the writing on the wall. I mean, I remember in college I smoked in class. That everybody smoked in college in class.
I remember.
And now that you can't even imagine that people would smoke in school. It's
And it wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
And that's what we're going for, the
Right,
change in the
right.
social
And
norm.
I think it's part of the culture, the whole culture that has to change. But tell me, what happens if I need support in stopping to smoke? I'm living in a housing authority building. I know it's coming down. I don't have the means to do it on my own. Do you help?
Absolutely. That's what we're doing right now. We are offering assistance to anyone in the community, anyone in Fall River, anyone outside of Fall River. Come to us. We are offering smoking cessation. We are offering support groups. We are bringing resources to people that don't know where to go. There is no copay. Am I right? No copay for getting smoking cessation through Mass Health.
Mass Health, yeah. Or a very small copay, might be
Yes.
$3. But Mass Health pays for, and most health insurances pay for, smoking cessation products. We also refer people to the Quit Line, which is a counseling, and the numbers will show that quit attempts are 8 to 12 times, serious quit attempts, before somebody stays quit. But if you combine your medication, your patches or your gum or your Shantex, whatever, with counseling, with a support group, you have a better likelihood of staying quit.
Right, and we know that from the dieting world, and we know that from the physical education world. Having a trainer, you get better results. You know, working out with a group, you get better results.
Exactly.
Right. So we do that. Tell me about smoke-free policies in terms of what are we going to do for e-cigarettes, hookahs, medical marijuana.
Well, a lot of the reason this is coming down is because private housing landlords now are calling us. We're doing that seminar next month. Private multi-unit landlords are calling us because they want to be a step ahead, so when the medical marijuana thing happens, they don't have to deal with that. They don't have to deal with tenants who have kids complaining about the next door tenant who's smoking their medical marijuana, even recreational marijuana if it comes to that. So what I tell landlords is smoking is smoking, whether you're smoking tobacco or e-cigarettes or hookah or cigar, whatever it is. Smoking is smoking.
We're coming to the end of our time. We have a couple of more seconds. So we're going to run your email addresses and your phone numbers.
Excellent.
And people
Absolutely.
should contact you if they want to stop smoking, they want support in healthy living,
Yes.
or they're a landlord and they're interested in making their building smoke-free.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay? So Marilyn Edge, Jack Shipley, here to help you. Pick up the phone, get on the email, make a difference, change your habits, and they're here to support you. So this is Wendy Garf-Lipp on Inside Fall River. Thanks for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again.